Hi, my name's Yanni. I'm an Aboriginal peer support worker at Headspace Adelaide. I'd like to acknowledge that the land we operate from and are meeting on right now is the land of the Kaurna people. I pay my respects to their elders, past, present and future, and acknowledge Headspace's commitment to making a positive contribution to young people who are Aboriginal.
It's definitely like a healthier way of living vicariously through like someone else, because you're not reading and you're not putting yourself in a position. You are, in all intents and purposes, that person in that time while you're playing as them. You make the choices as many, like, you know, even if it's just like walking a certain way, that's you doing it. You know, you're not like following someone else's story. You're making your own, even if it is in a different world.
And there's like some of that sense of identity too, like in games, like, I don't know, I come from the Animal Crossing side of things. Like you can so put your identity in that game and make it like, my island's all pink and like I like pink things, and like, you know, who your character is and how you design it and what you do on your island. Like the creative expression there is endless. Welcome back to Headspace Sessions podcast. Today we're talking about gaming and everything gaming. My name's Claire and I'm from the community engagement team at Headspace Adelaide, and I'm joined by our lovely co-hosts.
I'm Sam, once again, a youth ambassador with Headspace Edinburgh North.
I'm Sarah, also a youth ambassador with Headspace Edinburgh North.
I'm Aiden. I'm a Youth Reference Group member of Edinburgh North.
And we also have another guest with us today. You want to introduce yourself?
I'm Ben. I'm a YRG member at Headspace Adelaide, and I'm also a content developer for this podcast, but I'm here visibly this time.
He's not in the corner anymore.
No, Ben is normally the one writing our scripts. Today he's having a chat because all of us here love to play games. Who here plays games, and what games do we like playing at the moment?
Elden Ring.
Yeah. I was about to say my entire life has been consumed by Elden Ring.
It's very bad because it was like the week before university started, and Destiny dropped Witch Queen, and then Elden Ring dropped within like a day of each other, and it's very hard to motivate myself to study.
Priorities. Fun,
exactly.
right?
Fun.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, totally.
It's very good.
Yeah. Well,
it's very good.
I just, for the first time, I've slept on it for years, I just played the Mass Effect trilogy.
Oh, hell
and
yeah.
I must say, it's
Yes.
like my most favourite franchise ever.
Good.
And I feel like, you know, I'm pleased I found it now, but I feel like I've missed out on, you know, years of replay value, because it has a lot of replay value.
Did you get the like new version, or have you played the original?
I got the legendary. Yeah.
It's like the fixed
so
one.
good. I just love it. It's the best. So that's consumed my world for a little while, and what I'm Googling to try and find to buy online, I want a replica of the ship now. So it's getting a bit ridiculous, but you know, it's all good.
I love that when a game transfer like goes beyond just playing it, and you want like all the things that come from the game as well. Yeah,
definitely.
I myself definitely like adventure puzzle games, so I'm more of like the Professor Layton and like the games like that where the puzzles are like central to the storyline and there's like deep story to it. Definitely the ones that suck me in, and then I don't know, I feel like I'm being productive too for some reason when I'm like, I finished a puzzle.
You're using your brain.
Yeah. I love those kind of games. And then I'm just a classic Animal Crossing girl as well. Very
I was about to say, I'm getting back into that again now. Just like some Nintendo games like Animal Crossing or Breath of the Wild.
Yes, Breath of the Wild's great.
Yeah, go do that again. But yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So obviously we're all keen gamers, which is awesome. How do you make sure that you keep a healthy relationship with gaming and making sure that it's still part of your life in a healthy way?
I've really struggled with that personally. I used to play a lot, like all weekend and then every day after school when I was a bit younger. And my mum would say when I would get off, she'd be like, oh, you're grumpy now that you're off. Like you've been forced to stop, so you're really unhappy. And I sort of realised at that point that, it can become like completely consuming. And so I've learned to sort of be mindful of the time spent. Some games are really easy to lose yourself in, and just, you know, you look up and it's been 8 hours and you've achieved nothing. And I've, you know, as I've gotten older, I've become quite, I enjoy being productive. So if I haven't achieved something for the day, I will get off the game and try and do something. Or also having deadlines for like uni and my freelance business and stuff really helps motivate me to switch off and do something, because that's quite important to me. I think that finding yourself and finding interests and finding things that you want to do and need to do outside of gaming is a good way to, you know, motivate yourself to integrate it into a lifestyle that consists of other things as well.
Do you find gaming is still healthy in some way in your life though? Like, does it provide benefit? Is there positive benefit to gaming?
Yeah, definitely. It's an escape. It's an outlet. Who doesn't love consuming media of some form? It's the same as watching a movie. It's getting lost in another world for a few hours and just, being inspired and enjoying something. So it is definitely a good thing in moderation for sure.
Does anyone have like an online community from their games? I know last episode we talked about it a little bit. Yeah. Do you want to elaborate on how that might then, I guess, help form more of the healthy side of gaming?
Yeah, I was about to say I use it primarily, like especially since, obviously everyone talks about COVID all the time. But, when that happened, I was like, right, well, I'm so used to catching up with people in person. Like, this is weird. I can't do that anymore. So, I started catching up with friends and doing social things in my video games, which made it that sort of more beneficial thing. And I've got 2 groups now because the wonders of technology let me play with people on PC even though I'm on console now. So I've got my in-person friends who play mostly on PC and I can join them on console anyway. And I have a group of friends from Perth and we all play Destiny together and we raid and all that jazz. Yep.
Yeah.
Sick.
It's the same, it's very funny because I felt like I had a bit different. Like, obviously 2020 was like that year where everyone had to stay inside. So it was like I did do a lot of online sort of gaming with a lot of people, but I'd been doing it for a long time beforehand anyway because a lot of my school friends would get on after school and then play. And that was during, my high school time. So it was not far different from me going to uni online and then hopping on to Discord with my friends. But then recently I've gotten back into it because I'm more of a single player kind of guy. I not just because I don't like online gaming, but a lot of multiplayer games aren't always as good as single player games. It's just not made as well. And that's because multiplayer has, and this comes from an IT perspective, multiplayer has different, systems and stuff necessary. And so they can't put that much, time and effort into it. Unlike there are, exceptions, obviously. But most of the time, single player games are more fun. And so, it's not like I don't build community. I have. And, Destiny, definitely, Final Fantasy 14 and games like that. But I definitely prefer, God of War and Horizon Zero Dawn. And I even play, even multiplayer games, I can play single player anyway. So it's just get into it.
Do you think some of that storyline helps? Because you have more of that immersive experience with...
Yeah, it's like a movie.
100%. A movie you play, right? Yeah.
Way prefer single player to multiplayer. But that's also probably a result of my experiences with multiplayer. As a female who plays games, occasionally you come across people who are just, bullies. They realise you're a girl from your username or whatever, and then it's just sort of they just sort of grief you or target you or say stuff in the chat, and it's just it's really put me off a little bit. I'm sure it's better these days, but I'm talking 10 years ago. Yeah, that was my experience a lot of the time, and I just put me off a bit.
What about you, Aiden? Do you find gaming healthy for yourself with the way you play it?
Yeah, so to me, video games it's another method of media. So it's creative inspiration of having a different type of storytelling that's immersive. A lot of movies and stuff are good for, getting immersed into a world and understanding the universe. But I feel like video games has got that extra interactive element to it.
Yeah, definitely.
I think especially as well, on the topic of online gaming as well, it's doing single player stuff is good for the idea of making you feel epic adventurer that's going out and doing all these amazing things. But then also having that collaborative storytelling between other people, doing something absolutely magnificent. It is that sense of just extra community that you can find there, the idea of the satisfaction of as a team, doing a boss raid or, doing a massive achievement that brings everyone together.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Video games are great for that collaborative storytelling. I love that phrase. I definitely think it provides everyone a chance to take something away from the day. And I think sometimes I do feel productive with a video game, particularly if I complete a certain level or I'm today I'm going to do this section of I'm just going to play for an hour and hopefully I get to this point. And if you do that within that hour, it feels very satisfying to get that done. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
It's definitely a healthier way of living vicariously through someone else because you're not reading and you're not putting yourself in a position. You are in all intents and purposes that person in that time while you're playing as them. You make the choices. As many, like, you know, even if it's just like walking a certain way, that's you doing it. You know, you're not like following someone else's story. You're making your own, even if it is in a different world.
And there's like some of that sense of identity too. Like in games, like, I don't know, I come from the Animal Crossing side of things. Like you can so put your identity in that game and make it like, my island's all pink and like I like pink things and like, you know, who your character is and how you design it and what you do on your island. Like the creative expression there is endless because of the way the game's built. But I think in other games like that are great too for that creative expression and feeling like a sense of identity. And then you can share that with your friends and all that kind of stuff as well.
Yeah, Animal Crossing's great for that. I just recently got the DLC where you can decorate clients' houses and stuff. And every night I'd do one house before bed. And it was just the perfect end to the day. It was really cool. And yeah, you're right. It's a great creative outlet. And that's a really important feature in games, I think, is if, you know, some people may not love painting, may not love writing, but they might love decorating houses. And it's like a really cool way to discover a passion without spending lots of money in decorating a house, for real.
It's also really awesome how different every game is. Like, like me.
Really keen. I have something to add, but you go first.
So I mentioned Elden Ring before. Elden Ring is is classified as a Soulsborne series.
You're
essentially.
entering dangerous.
I am entering dangerous territory.
I'm just putting that out there.
And so the Soulsborne series, you know, like a condensed history is that the developers made games that have souls or born in the name, and that's why it's called Soulsborne. They make notoriously hard games, but the point of the game isn't that it's hard. The point of the game is that you have to work for it. As two different things. So people like to say that the games are hard, but they're actually not hard. They're just scaled to a different level of difficulty and understanding, because you actually have to learn the game. And it's really funny that I love the series and those games are some of my favorite games, but my favorite games in that sort of difficult genre is not even from that developer, and it's a very hot take. And I don't want to say what it is because I think it's a bit too hot of a take.
Oh, go on, say it. No,
it's the Surge, the Surge 2 to be specific. And it's because it's the setting and like there's a lot of customization and stuff in those games because it is basically just like you yourself. What happens if you just get plopped in like hard mode? Right.
How do you...
And it's just crazy to think that there are games like this that, like, you know, you have to spend like hours on, you know, the first brick wall that you get and you're just throwing yourself at it every single time. And then you might switch off and you go, oh, I'm going to pick up my Switch now. And then you start, you know, digging holes and putting plants and stuff. It's like...
It's the duality of games.
Different types of games,
That's interesting, because how do you go from like a world where everything is instant gratification? You can Google literally anything and find the answer in like a second. You can find anything on Facebook, Instagram, all the platforms. How do you go from being immersed in media and stuff that's so instantly gratifying into a game that challenges you to think, and it takes time to get somewhere?
Well, in Souls games, people leave messages like "Don't give up, skeleton," and it motivates you to keep trying.
They also put "jump here" in unclear.
I like the interconnectivity of like the Souls games because they're mostly single player oriented, but you can leave messages on the ground
so
for other players to see live
and stuff. Yeah, I think some of them, the more helpful ones, are left by developers.
Yeah,
because like let's be real, like
most people put inappropriate jokes or like Fortnite on the ground.
Right.
Or like no maidens.
Or my favorite thing is any four-legged creature in Elden Ring. People just identify it as a dog. So there's like a turtle standing there and they're like,
dog.
Is this a dog?
Yes.
Yeah. That makes me think of, like, I don't know if you guys have heard about this, but something about when, who made Legend of Zelda, the first Legend of Zelda? What's his name?
I couldn't tell you.
I can't remember. The idea of it is they made it specifically like to a certain level of difficulty because it was the idea that he wanted to build a community out of it. So it's not like, because back then, you know, there's no Googling trying to find like, you know, where's the best weapon or whatever. It's the idea that in order to, like, you had to build a community, you had to talk about it, you had to understand from each other, you know, how did you get past this part? And you have to, you know, socialize about it.
Yeah, that's cool.
And honestly, what like Legend of Zelda does get enough credit for creating like fantasy RGB, RPG genre. Like, if it wasn't for that original Legend of Zelda, a lot of the games that we play now, we'd probably take quite for granted.
Granted,
because it's
definitely.
like,
I mean, for me, it was just a logical move. It was like, oh, I played Zelda all the time as a kid, and now there's this really hard, mean version of Zelda where they want to, you know,
they hurt,
crush you with difficulty. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm up for it.
Yeah.
This is big Zelda.
Yeah.
It's just so rewarding though. Like once you figure it out, it's like it actually feels like learning, like education.
Because I was going to say the reason I got so excited before is because it sounds really dumb, but I only recently learnt about like different categories of games and like different games I was interested in because I engaged in a conversation with friends about games and I'm like, I'd like try this one and I love it and I don't understand. I would like pick something else up that I think would be really cool and it just doesn't like vibe with me. And so then we talked about, and that's how I learnt that I'm like such like an adventure puzzle orientated gaming person. And so ever since knowing that, it's been such a satisfying like gaming journey since then for the past couple of years because I can be like, no, I probably won't vibe with this, or yes, I'll definitely enjoy that. And so once you're able to work that out, I think it's more of a satisfying experience for some people. I don't know.
Yeah.
So it's cool that you can like take maybe games that you're like in childhood, this is great, and then when you're an adult, you're like, this is the next level of that.
Find things
follow that pattern. Yeah,
it's like how Pokemon evolved as we were growing up. Because like the newest one that came out is like so different from when we first started playing.
Isn't it amazing?
But it's really good, and it's just proves that because like a lot of games that are in like a series stick to formula and they stick to what works, and I think that that like developers need to do this more is break that cycle, and it's the same actually with Elden Ring because Elden Ring is the first open world from that series. Before it was just a dungeon crawler, which means that it's quite. So if you looked at the map from like an inspect elements point of view, it's actually just like a big tube that goes down. So it's literally, it spirals.
Yeah, it's like a spiral.
It's a tower.
Screw. Yeah.
It's a tower essentially. Yeah, it's a screw.
Yeah.
And you just follow a path. And like there are multiple branches, but like they don't really like.
You still come back to.
You basically have to do, it's linear.
Yeah.
And the open world aspect is like.
You can do whatever you want.
Freeing. And that's why when Breath of the Wild came out, it was like, okay, so now we're getting to it. And I think
it's exciting.
That's why Skyrim came out in 2011 and it is still one of the most talked about games. And people compare everything to Skyrim. And while I don't agree with that, I think it just proves that open world, and even though like let's be real, a lot of developers have been making open world games since long before Skyrim, but I think it was like, it just proves how effective open world is at creating a community. Like the biggest communities.
Well, I wanted to highlight with like something like Breath of the Wild, you can go like
straight
beat
to
the final boss
exactly
straight away,
in like the first 12 minutes of the game, and theoretically you can just
if you knew
good enough.
Like it's not to that level. Like some games aren't to that level. Like that's freedom to the max, but it's just very, very rewarding when you have played the whole everything that 100%. I haven't done it a lot because it's time consuming. I think the first game I actually ever did it with was Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
Oh, really?
But it was just like I got so into it. I was like, wow. I don't care about the percentage normally, but the game is just so much. It's so fun going somewhere, finding something. Because like I'm not that kind of person in real life. I hate doing stuff out of the ordinary. I hate taking different routes.
Like my patterns and my.
I have one way to get to uni and one way only. There's like 100 ways to get there, but I'm like, no, I'm following this road. And if I don't, I'll get visibly annoyed.
Wow. You know what? I really dislike routine, so I'm like the complete opposite.
I'm like, I was about to say
need
the same.
something
I have
different.
to spice it up every like.
Yeah, I
can't
really
take the same
down.
route too many times, or I have to change it.
Yeah, I will change up my route. Like I will just do things differently all the time because I just am more stimulated that way. And there's a theory that it's like linked to introversion and extroversion in your personality. So like it's said that if you're an extrovert, you need more stimulation, so you're more likely to, sensation seek and stuff. Whereas if you're introverted, you're more likely to look for comfortable experiences and situations. And I just find that interesting in relation to games as well. Like what sort of gaming behaviors do you exhibit, and how does that like relate to your personality? And, is that a good thing or a bad thing? And yeah.
Well, I guess on that then as well, has anyone ever experienced where gaming's kind of become a problem for them or know of anyone?
There is this memory I have from when I was 11, right? And it is so vivid to this day. I used to game on my mum's old laptop, right? At Minecraft, 99% of the time. There was one day where I was sitting in my bedroom, the lights are off. I had a massive bowl of pistachios and I was building this giant thing in Minecraft. And I was midway about to bite into a pistachio, and I was like, what am I doing with myself?
Yeah.
Is this excessive?
Like there was like this revelation,
Wow.
and I was like, I literally do this all day, and I'm building this giant thing, but what? It's just a giant thing. I'm not doing anything meaningful.
It's like existential moment. Yeah.
I used to, my parents, like when I was younger, they weren't like the biggest fan of video games. They definitely didn't, like obviously like they didn't see like the creative side of it. They were a bit more like productive people. So when I got games, it was like very situational, kind of like you can play now kind of thing. So what would happen is I would like sneak my DS from like their room, and like it would be like pitch black. And this is like back when I was younger, where you should be sleeping, right? I'd be staying up until like 1 a.m. in the dark with the DS this close to my face, playing Pokemon.
And
then you got to do like the pillow dive when
or like I don't know if you guys ever did this, but like if you got like a game for your birthday, but your parents would buy it like months in advance, and then they'd be like, okay, we're gonna hide it. I would always find it, swap it out for a different game, and start playing it, finish it off, and then put it back once I finished playing the game, and then they give it to me birthday. I'm like, OMG! I was like, I like just couldn't. I like had to play. It was like, it's not like an addiction, but it was like a compulsion. I was like, I want to play it. I'm going to play it now.
Yeah.
Even though it's like 1 a.m. and I'm like literally burning my eye, like my corneas off. I don't care. I want to catch the Arceus now, please.
To be fair, Pokemon doesn't help when it's like you need to catch this Pokemon, but it only appears at 5 a.m. on Friday morning.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's that about?
Yeah, and it's like I was not smart enough, and I still am not, to like do change time and stuff like that, or like internet spoofing and like IP. I'm like, nope. I'm just going to do it
wake up
naturally.
at 5 a.m. and do it.
And then my parents are like, what is this guy doing?
What is he doing? Why is he so motivated?
And my parents are like, why can't, no, like, they'd be like, you put all this effort into your games. What about like other aspects of life? Like, like there is other things. And I'm like, no, there isn't. Games are my life. Funny story about that. I was like to my parents, I'm going to go into game development. They're like, haha, no. And look where I am now. I'm studying game development.
Yeah. Exactly. Take that.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is like it's such a cool industry. There's so much involved in it. And I remember online I even saw like a diploma of e-sport event management or something, which I think is wildly specific but so relevant and really cool.
Yeah. Like
super cool. So it's like not even an irrelevant hobby anymore. Like that's the argument that a lot of people like to use, and that's it doesn't benefit you in the real world, and this stuff is just a waste of time. You should be outside playing, and vitamin D is very good for you, absolutely. But doesn't it foster creativity, like Claire was saying, and doesn't it foster critical thinking as well, and puzzles is cognition and logic, and it's actually, and you socialize with people, like it's actually huge benefits, and also prospects for working in the industry. It's an industry that you could get employment in these days, and that's not a stretch.
Exactly. And about the vitamin D thing, my parents used to say that I used to just take my DS.
Vitamin DS.
But I think there is a balance you do have to find.
It's like obviously it's like a lot of sort of addictive, enjoyable things.
It's that gratification.
It's that line between like moderation and reaping the absolute most of the positive effects, and then going too far and suddenly you're like,
sharp inhale. After the moment you had, did you then do anything to sort of help yourself put it back in moderation? Do you feel like you made changes when you realized?
Yeah, and I think thankfully they've stuck to, because obviously I'd say, like, if people ask me what my hobbies are, I think one of my top 3 is still gaming to this day, and I don't think that's ever changed. But I think I tried not to view it as like this like huge negative thing, because I think gaming, as Sarah mentioned earlier, is a form of like this escapism, and I think you've really just got to make sure you're not like, why are you trying to escape? What fantasy are you going into to get out of real life from? And I think for me, I tried to remember that it's a safe space, but you don't want it to stagnate.
Yeah.
You need to keep it like this like fresh thing that you're benefiting from. And I think for me, I just simply changed what sort of level of priority it was for me in my day-to-day life. So it, now I view it as almost like a time passer. So it fits into my schedule rather than has its own place in my schedule. Where it's like, I'm doing this in the middle of the day and this in the evening, and I have, a spare
time,
little bit of time between those two. I'll play some games to pass the time. And if something pops up, then there's less game time probably. But, that's my personal method at least.
Yeah.
And you're okay with that. Like you realize that it's like a healthy.
It's like spontaneously reading a book or making food or something.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah.
you're filling the slots of your already existing plans.
Just as easily as I would play a game, I wouldn't at the same time.
Yeah.
Like it's it's not like, no, I'm gaming now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's understanding, like personally for me, it's understanding the difference between like obsessing over something and trying to find gratification of doing like all the side quests and completing it, and just finding rest in it and finding that you are doing this in your free time because you do want to inspire yourself. You do want to, I guess, sort of like have that small sense of escape. But when you're sort of chasing it with the idea that this is what matters to you, this is all that matters to you, the idea of, completing this game for the 30th time or something like that, like the question is like, when does, like, is that going to give you that rest, that gratification that you're looking for? And is it balanced in sort of what your life is looking like?
Definitely. I think finding that balance is the important bit. And I like the idea of just slotting it into where there's extra time in your day. Like it's important to have hobbies and to prioritize your hobbies, but making sure that's balanced in everything that you do with life.
But sometimes it's like, it's when it's getting late but I'm having fun. It can be hard to pull myself away.
Yeah.
That one more game thing is just, it's like the one more show, one more movie.
It's a trap. It's a trap.
It's like even reading books, one more chapter. Like it's the same mentality, but it's like, it's like 1 a.m. and you're like, oh.
Especially if it's something
I've got to get up at 7.
It's like a win or lose situation.
Yeah.
And it's like, like you haven't had a win in ages and you're like, I just need to get one.
Yeah.
How do you, so obviously that relates to then sleep. So how do you make sure it doesn't impact your sleep when it's
I do
like
try
that?
to switch off at least half an hour beforehand.
Cool. Have that like wind down time.
Yeah.
I have a sort of, because I've been like horrible at sleeping since I, appeared in the world pretty much.
Since you spawned in.
Like I've never slept amazingly. Yeah.
Since the lobby,
The one-liners are great this episode.
But, for me, I think, maybe I have a little bit of a benefit there because I have to have a wind down routine anyway. But, I find, I've sort of Pavlov's dogged myself into associating like, I love having like, just like a dark shower. And because I do that, consistently before I go to sleep, I associate it with, it's bedtime now. I'm going to, So that's sort of my, and that gives me like, that good like sort of half an hour to an hour depending on what else I'm doing during that wind down after I've finished gaming. Yeah.
I noticed before I had my like desktop, I used to game on my laptop, so I just game in bed, and it would be hard to sleep because I didn't associate bed and sleep. But then once I moved to a desk, it was like way easier. That association was way more present. When it's on my bed.
Yeah, I did the same.
Yeah.
There's also the blue light element of that, and that tricks your brain into thinking it's daytime and it's time to be awake, and so it can be hard to, get off the game and then just go straight to bed. So I try and have a little bit of time between then and at getting off the game and going to bed. But some screens have a blue light function you can turn off and that can help.
And
But
like you can get flux and stuff, which you can make it like red. So it's like,
it does the opposite.
Yeah. So, but for me, like sleep, I'm definitely a night person. Definitely feel my best in the late afternoon and at night. So for me, going to bed early doesn't really work anyway. So I, got to fill that time somehow. If I stay up a little bit later on weekends, if I've got nothing on the next day, it's probably because I'm gaming. So I'm just not a morning person as it is. So.
But it's good still that you've been able to like provide that balance to yourself where you're like on a weekend when there's nothing on the next day.
Yeah.
So you can still allow yourself that like treat, I guess, if you're of staying up late, but it's still manageable in your life and the way that it balances out with everything for sure.
It's not compromising with your responsibilities.
Yeah.
What is out there, yeah.
It's still the priorities in check, like Ben was saying. Yeah.
I think I'm in like a similar boat, but because my sleep personally is like this like house of cards at all times. So I have to like carefully tend this like this sleep flower and make sure it doesn't die. And I found, my sort of favorite method, because I don't necessarily have a consistent schedule from week to week. So for me, it's become less about like, I'm going to go to bed at this time and wake up at this time. And it's more about like, I'm going to aim to get a good 8-9 hours of sleep, regardless of what time I am sleeping. And obviously you get more rest at nighttime. So optimally, I usually aim for like, being in bed like, midnight roughly, and then waking up a good 8 hours later where I can.
Yeah.
But I think,
it's back into that sort of idea of scheduling it in the right time without compromising what's important in your health.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And having responsibilities helps as well, like having a commitment, like having to record a podcast or going to class or going to work. Like that helps. It sort of necessitates a balance. And, if you've sort of withdrawn a little bit from other activities, then it can definitely be easy to be consumed by gaming because there's nothing else to do.
Yeah.
And I definitely had that. I had a little period after high school and between like entering the workforce, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and I had like a good 6 months there where I didn't have much going on at all, and it was just video games, specifically State of Decay, which is a great game, but I put hundreds and hundreds of hours into it, and I really was quite up. I was pretty depressed at the time, to be honest, not really having a direction, and like that was what I had. I'd be like, oh, I guess I'll jump on and manage my base and go look for some supplies in the town, and that was the extent of what I would achieve, and it really did wear me down over time. So I realized for my personality I need to be doing lots of things and keeping quite busy and having games, but yes, having a huge, very important balance.
Yeah. With a lot of these games, and we kind of touched on it last episode as well, having that online aspect of it, how do you make sure that you're staying safe in that world and making sure that your community you're involving yourself with is one that you feel safe in and is, like, I guess, providing that positive input to your life?
I think... Oh, no, I'll let you go.
No, you go. You're the guest.
Thank you. Yeah, I can talk your ears off and I don't have any consequences later. No, I was going to say, I think there's an important distinction to be made between your like gaming safe space, like, especially if you're playing mostly single player games. And then I prefer to think of online gaming as like you're creating multiple smaller sort of like pocket safe spaces. And, if you're not in that pocket at the time, you've got to be a bit more careful. Like I think, as Sarah was saying, online, obviously, there's that running gag where it's like, oh, back in my day when we were playing Call of Duty on the Xbox 360, we had it way worse than...
You probably did, but,
but like, and obviously it's improved. The attitude of people online gaming has improved a lot. Yeah. But there are still those people that treat it like those, like, have to do as much verbal damage to someone as possible. And I think
because it's anonymous.
It's a pseudonymity.
But it's like
it's also a big shield for you. Yeah,
it's just like they're dealing with their own inadequacies and they just have no outlet
projecting
in the real, like in offline to put it out, and it's pretty upsetting. For me, it's just I only put in as much, like I only take out as much as I put in.
Yep.
So like it's recent with Destiny, right? I'm like, I bit the bullet. I was like, I need help. I need to do this dungeon. I need at least 2 other people. Someone was like, okay, I can help you. I'm like, cool. I'll do that. We'll do it together. We'll do it clear because we both need the same thing. Done. Dusted. Nothing more, nothing less. No friend request, nothing like that. It was just a GG's and it was gone. And that's the kind of online I like. And it was the same with Final Fantasy. It's like when I needed to do a raid, it automatic party finder, fully anonymous. Some people were just doing for their XP. I didn't care. No talking. Nothing like that. No like harassment because like, it's just not worth it, I would rather just play with people I know in real life. I'm not a big fan of making friends online. You don't know who they are. And like you hear all these good stories, but you also hear a lot of the bad. And it's been going on since like, before online gaming was even like as much of a phenomenon as it is now because of, like lockdowns. People do like unthinkable things in real life to people because of things that happen online, and I don't want to be put in that situation, so I keep myself as offline as I can online.
For me, I found my optimal method generally, I usually keep it in the same sort of space where I'm usually playing with people I know unless I absolutely want to do something that I need to enlist the help of internet strangers to do. But, even sort of making new friends, I usually make them through my existing friends that I know and sort of, I've got a good judge of their character and I know generally what they're sort of going to be doing and the sort of people they'll be associating with. But, like Sam said, like, I've got people, I've never met the people I'm friends with from Perth in person. And, sometimes some of their friends do strange and very immoral things. And, it comes as this shock because you don't really know how they're going to conduct themselves in real life.
Yeah.
It's very juvenile. It's just like...
Exactly.
I guess
you're-
that's why it's great with online gaming. You
Yeah.
can
You can
mute
switch
and
off.
block people.
Yeah, and that's
step
my
out of
favorite
those
thing. Is
communities.
just turning it off, and you just see the slider go down, and their voice fades, and then it's just happiness.
Bliss.
Sweet bliss. Yeah.
Sweet bliss.
Yeah.
Ignorance is bliss often.
And it's very good that you can communicate with people that you know in real life as well online, but a
Yeah.
lot of people do change the way they act online, behave.
Versus, yeah.
Even though you know them and you would literally be able to see them in person, they still put on a persona online because it's, online.
Yeah.
a pseudonymous sort
Yeah,
of
pseudonymous.
situation, yeah.
But at least you can put those boundaries in place and provide that,
I think
providing that safe
Yeah.
space for yourself where you know where your boundaries are yourself and when you need to tap out or when things are not feeling so great for yourself.
Well,
Yeah,
as an
totally.
like I was I've got such a different perspective. Like as an adult, right? And I know like what I can and can't do. I will avoid those kinds of situations. But when
Yeah.
like younger people, especially like those multiplayer games where it's not the game's fault, but they do push community building because it's the whole point of them making, the company making money is that someone builds a community because then more people start playing and more revenue. But because, someone's like 13, 14 plus, then, they haven't lived through it. They haven't experienced, the bad side of online gaming. And then it could just, be dangerous. And it's like, I think now there's a bit more of a push you have to be safe. Don't ever give anyone your password.
but it used to be the Wild West.
Yeah, it used to be
I remember, even
free for all.
when
It was like Fortnite.
Yeah. When I was that sort of like, I always had a little bit of a rule with myself, even when I was a kid, where I just wouldn't use a microphone unless I was with people
That's good.
I knew in person and whatnot. But even then, you've still got text chat and stuff.
Yeah.
And the wonderful thing about text chat is you know even less about the person than if you're voice chatting generally. I mean, nowadays that doesn't really work because voice changes exist. But it's true. But this is back in the Wild West.
Yeah.
And obviously, young child playing a game oriented at children, but that doesn't stop people conducting themselves the way the demographic audience of a video game would be conducting themselves. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
I learnt some rude things off of video game chats,
Yeah.
and I just didn't even know the meaning of it. So when I used it, in real life, thinking it was a normal word, I'd get in trouble because I just had that unfiltered exposure to it, and there were no real tools at the time to kind of take yourself away from that.
Whereas now I guess you can.
I think it's really good now. Yeah.
On that, I guess reflecting on your younger self then, I like this. Like, what tips do you think you would give yourself now even or when you were younger, I guess, to keep your gaming healthy?
I think
We've talked a lot about it.
I've got one.
I think for me to give to myself, it's understanding why you're there, even if it's single player or multiplayer. Understanding that you're there for the idea of inspiration, for the idea you have free time, you can do this. But the idea of, like we were talking about, just getting like obsessively lost in something, or having those interactions with those people online that could be those people that get lost in it in the same way. It's understanding that you're there just to have fun, and if there's something that's compromising that, whether it's being on there for too long, or certain people you meet, you're obligated to do as much as you are safe to do, or as that you feel that you're obligated to do.
To keep yourself happy and healthy.
Yeah.
I like that.
think
Yeah.
I think for me, pseudo profound or whatever, but I literally sometimes just step back and ask myself if I'm content.
Yep.
Especially if I'm doing that thing where I'm like, I don't do it so much anymore, but back when I was younger, I used to do this thing where I was like, I have to do this in this game. I have to do it. And there's no actual rational reason I have to do it, but I'm telling myself I have to do it. So nowadays I step back and, especially because I've been playing so much Elden Ring recently. My partner walked in and she was surprised. She's like, "Oh, you're not playing Elden Ring today? What?" Like, in terms of my game time, obviously.
Yeah.
Not just all day, every day. That's not how I'm going. I'd be a bit of a hypocrite if I was doing that. But if I'm smashing my face against a really difficult boss, I step back and I'm like, all right, am I having a good time anymore? Am I content with what I'm trying to do? Can I come back to it later?
Yeah.
And if
That's great advice.
yeah, and if I feel like I just need to disconnect from that for a bit, I can because you're almost separating yourself from being like I think Sam was saying it before, like you are in that game when you're playing a game, you are by all means and values you're whatever character you're controlling functionally, and I think it's important to remember to disconnect yourself from that entity in that game. Because you are also like a human being with an outside life.
Yes.
And you have priorities and responsibilities that you have to stick to.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And for me, if I could talk to little Sarah before she jumps on the computer for the first time, is to anonymize that username.
Yeah. Giving yourself that safety online. Yeah.
Like maybe trying, if, just being mindful of, what attributes of a username might make you a target for behavior that you're not about. So going on an online game with Sarah in my username would often invite unwanted attention. People would just send me random friend requests because they saw my username run past in the world, send me messages asking where I'm from, what do you look like, stuff like that. And that's just such a, because I think that doesn't happen in the real world to that extent.
I think it's this weird, it's this weird stigma, especially back, I think it's thankfully a lot more balanced now, but it used to be like, oh, is that a girl gamer? I've never seen one of those before.
Yeah, I had a lot of that sort of thing. Yeah. And it's, it's quite unsettling, especially when you're very young and you don't really, you as a female, sometimes growing up in society, you're very conditioned to be agreeable and give people what they want and be that nice, smiling, pleasant person that makes everybody else comfortable. And that was a hard thing to overcome in that world, to set up those boundaries and barriers. And when you couple that social expectation with that gaming online experience, it can be really difficult to navigate that and come out with a good outcome. So I would definitely tell her to just not put the name in there, please.
Do you feel it's better now? Do you feel like it's like your boundaries are in place? It's more of a healthy space for you, things like that?
Yeah, but then I do find myself questioning motives as well. So like a little while ago I was playing Elder Scrolls Online and I love that game. It's so good. But I would group up with people, or people would randomly want to group up in the world, or send me a whisper or something, and I'd be like, oh, here we go. Like I just had the reflex, because my username was obviously a female. It's not my name anymore, but it had a female connotation, and I would just question the motives. I'd be like, oh, we'll see where this goes. And sometimes it would materialize that it was like totally fine. They'd be like, hey, do you need to do the daily quest, or do you need to do this, or have you done this dungeon? And I'd be like, no, and we'd team up and do it, and it was great. But sometimes it was still so where are you from? How old are you? Yeah, and that was just like, nah.
Reaching an important barrier.
Put those barriers.
Even when I go, I just never ask any kind of personal question. Like, I did, I said it before, I'm a very in and out kind of person. Get done, wash my hands, all good. Like, but like, what I would tell my younger self is not to feel inadequate that you're not playing as much games, because some people, and it still happens today, people really value themselves over how many hours they have on a game. And I only just recently breached 200 on Destiny hours wise, and that's big for me. But then some people go, oh, well, look at me, I've got 1,000. And I'm like, well, that just says to me that I do other things. And that's not a bad thing. Why do you need to tell me that you've got X amount of hours? I had a friend the other day just go, how many hours do you think I've got in Elden Ring? And I'm like, I don't really care. I've got 14, and that's fun for me because I'm having fun, and I play 2 hours at a time, and then I get tired. I get tired of gaming. And people used to shame me, oh, you're getting off now? Yes, I'm getting off now. My head hurts from having to try and put up with you.
That's funny. I've always had
it's like a social battery.
Yeah, not true. Like it's those boundaries and balance in your life that you need through the game.
I really do love that appear offline function. I'm going to put it that way. But I found it was like the opposite of that. I reckon when people started asking me like, how many hours you have in this game, I'd look at it and I'd be like, like that is horrifying. Like, I'm pretty good with Destiny, thankfully. Like all of my friends have like 2 to 3 times the amount of hours I have, and obviously that's like, oh yeah, I'm the casual. I'm not as sweaty of a gamer.
Same.
But for me, I think like you're saying, I think that's always been my measure of like, oh, I'm still partaking in my other activities that aren't attached to a game.
I also play a lot of different games.
I
don't like playing
I
like one game, but I don't like playing the same game.
All of my friends, like one of my friends, he's one of those people that's played like so much Overwatch He's
I just can't.
Right.
All I can do is laugh.
I used to play Overwatch,
Yeah,
but
so did I.
you know, like you're saying, like
yeah.
I like to
I know
play
exactly.
different games.
Yeah.
We'll see with Elden Ring.
Opinion could change.
I've 100%ed all the Dark Souls games, so I
Yeah.
probably will eventually over time do the same with Elden Ring. But you know, he's played it so much that he's reached like, you know, I think you can get like a diamond border after gold or something, and he makes like Smurf accounts, which are like, you know, like new accounts.
But because he's a pro.
But
at that point.
the like, it's kind of funny, kind of terrifying in a way. All of his Smurf accounts are like hundreds of levels higher than the one account I've always used to play Overwatch.
Yeah.
Even back when I used to play it more frequently.
Yeah.
And it's just, you know, I think it's that balance you got to achieve.
Same thing
I
happened to
think-
me when I went into lockdown. Even when I was in lockdown and I was not doing anything else, it was the same. Like, well, I still want to do something else.
Yeah. I think for me as well, if I was going to tell myself something younger, it would be about balance. Like you've unlocked a memory when you, Sam, when you were talking about like in your bedroom, like particularly with your DS, because that's what I had, and, like under your pillows, just hiding.
It was a perfect hiding place.
But then also when we were younger, we used to go out on all these camping trips and all of these like hiking trips, and like there would be big drives and things like that. But so I'd stick my head into my DS and, you know, chew up time that way when I could be looking out the window and what's that, and like learning at what's surrounding me. But no, we'd stop and then be on the DS and things like that. So I think these days finding balance and making sure you're present in life still with what you're doing is important with games.
Understanding what it represents for you.
Absolutely.
If it's going to be about your identity of, oh yeah, I spent this amount of time in this one specific game. Or if it's about, you know, just genuinely getting that inspiration and that idea of, you know, contributing to something that's not necessarily everything.
Yeah.
Can I just ask, what do you mean by inspiration? What do you channel that into after gaming?
I think for me, so from what I understand, everyone here is like very like adventure gamer, right? So I think for me, the idea of inspiration, like it can be a lot of artistic inspiration. So the idea of like, oh, that's a really interesting design character, or like the idea of that character that like the way they wrote the character is really interesting. But I think for me, ideally, like it gives me that motivation to kind of remember that like my story, although like the world we live in isn't quite as fantastical as some of the other ones, the idea that, you know, I'm my own adventurer. I got my own story that I'm writing. And, you know, although I might not be going out and slaying dragons all the time, like I'm still just as like, I could be as unique as I feel like I need to be.
Yeah, okay.
That's cool.
Yeah.
The best part about it.
On that note, I forgot to. I didn't want to like take up too much time in the like sort of intro area where we were just talking about what we generally do with games. But my main sort of thing I do, because I love RPGs, but I don't necessarily do it like the way like some people do, where they have like, you know, 10 different characters and they're like, all right, this one is like some sort of holy, very religious paladin. For me, my favorite thing to do is just dump myself in that game with my, you know, sort of real life equivalent. So I'm not like a super strong buff guy or anything, because obviously I'm not a super strong buff guy. And I like just being like, what would I do in this given situation? What's my first reaction and instinct to do in this situation? And, you know, like, what are the ramifications of that? How does that make me feel? That sort of result. And, you know, like what do I enjoy doing in these games? And how can I sort of, you know, like I want to enter a career where I'm helping people.
Yeah.
And I kind of derived that from when I was a kid. I didn't like being the bad guy. I didn't like going and shooting someone because they told me my pants were ugly.
Yeah.
Like, they can tell me my pants are ugly and I'm not going to shoot them.
Yeah. The bigger
Because
person.
who shoots someone for saying your pants are ugly, right? And I think, you know, in real life, I can use that as this means to be like, this is what makes me happy and this is what I want to pursue.
I like that.
In a sort of, you know, like Adrian was saying, like you can have your own adventure in your real life, but you can use it as that sort of inspiration for yourself. Yeah.
I think to, I guess, wrap up the episode then, I would be really keen as listeners to invite you to have a think about like how you're keeping your gaming healthy. If you're a gamer, if you're not, talk to your friends in your life about their gaming and how they're keeping it healthy, because I think it's important in life to take time and self-reflect. And I think this episode caused us all to self-reflect a little bit about it and talked about it off recording, and so I encourage you to think about that as well. But also, if you want to know more about, you know, keeping a healthy online gaming world, Headspace has lots of great resources on our website. You just go headspace.org.au and type in healthy gaming, and there's a bunch of information that we talked about today. And as always, if anything has been brought up for you for this episode, there's Lifeline, or if there's an emergency as well, there's 000. But we appreciate you for coming and listening to us. And thank you so much, lovely Ben, for being a guest on our episode today.
Oh, thank you, Ben.
Thanks, Ben. It was good.